Good afternoon from Manila. My name is Evgeny Zhukov, and I am Director General of Central and West Regional Department in the Asian Development Bank. I am very honored to be welcoming you today to the Central Asia Regional Economic Cooperation Program, or CAREC, high-level session during ADB's 54th Annual General Meeting. As we recount CAREC's role over the past 20 years in strengthening regional connectivity and trade among member countries, the session today will start the discussion to set CAREC's agenda for the future based on technology and digital transformation to power deeper regional cooperation and integration. We hope you have already settled now. I would like to first recognize CAREC's host government for this year and our co-chair for today, Mr. Mikhail Jabarov, Minister of Economy of Azerbaijan. I would also like to recognize each of our valuable CAREC member countries who have taken time out of their busy schedules to join and enlighten us and the audience today with their thoughts on regional cooperation through digital transformation. We have the following participants. For Afghanistan, Mr. Mohammed Khalid Payanda, Acting Minister of Finance. For People's Republic of China, Mr. Qiangwu Zhou, Director General, Department of International Economic and Financial Cooperation, Ministry of Finance. For Georgia, Mr. Lasha Kutsushvili, Minister, Ministry of Finance. For Kazakhstan, Mr. Alibek Konturov, Vice Minister of National Economy. For Kyrgyz Republic, Mr. Sultan Akhmatov, Deputy Minister, Ministry of Economy and Finance. For Mongolia, Ms. Jaflan Bold, Minister, Ministry of Finance. For Pakistan, Mr. Zubair Ashgar Qureshi, Additional Secretary, Economic Affairs Division. For Tajikistan, Mr. Nimatullah Hikmatullah, Assistant to the President of Tajikistan on Economic Issues. For Turkmenistan, Mr. Mohamed Geldi Serdarov, Minister, Ministry of Finance and Economy. For Uzbekistan, Mr. Shuhrat Vafayev, Deputy Minister, Ministry of Investment and Foreign Trade. Before we formally begin, I'm also pleased to welcome President of Islamic Development Bank, Dr. Bandar Hajar, Vice President for Operations 1 in ADB, and our co-chair today, Mr. Shixin Chen, and Vice President of the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, Mr. Joachim von Amsberg. We also have with us Ms. Susanna Harditai, the Managing Director for Central Asia of the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development. To help inform and moderate our discussions today, we have with us Mr. Tom Standage, Deputy Editor of The Economist. He's responsible for newspaper's digital strategy and the development of the new digital products. We expect that discussion today will help highlight and open up new opportunities for deepening regional cooperation among CAREC countries based on application of digital technologies. The deliberations today will provide key inputs for the preparation of the first CAREC digital strategy, which we expect to complete later this year for the endorsement at the CAREC's Ministerial Conference at the end of November or early December 2021. And now, to deliver the welcome remarks, I invite Mr. Mikhail Jabarov, Minister of Economy, Azerbaijan. Mr. Jabarov, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Your Excellency, ADB Vice President, Mr. Shixin Chen, honorable ministers, dear colleagues, dear participants. First of all, I would like to extend my appreciation to Asian Development Bank and CAREC Secretariat for organizing this virtual high-level session during ADB annual meeting. Despite COVID-19 pandemic, ADB, CAREC member countries and its development partners undertake efficient activity towards further strengthening of regional cooperation in the CAREC region. As a CAREC chair in 2021, I want to clearly express Azerbaijan's commitment to continue to promote stronger regional cooperation and integration. CAREC program has been actively contributing to the region's development for 2 decades, and no doubt that it will remain crucial to its post-pandemic recovery. Program supports further strengthening of the regional connectivity by investing in high-quality projects in varied clusters, including activity in new priority areas and enhancing its role as a catalyst for regional cooperation in the field of research, knowledge, and best practices sharing. Today, we are discussing a very important milestone devoted to 20th anniversary of CAREC, Reimagining regional cooperation through digital transformation. Our country pays great attention to increasing role and necessity of the digitalization and related transformation of economy, which will certainly serve as a tool to further boost cooperation in the CAREC region. The government of Azerbaijan has adopted and currently developing a number of programs aimed at digital transformation of country's economy. Last year has shown clearly that level of digitalization of economy had a direct impact on easing the burden caused by the pandemic. In February 2021, Azerbaijan 2030 national priorities on socio-economic development strategy was endorsed, which includes 5 main directions, namely sustainably growing competitive economy, dynamic and inclusive society based on social justice, competitive human capital and land for modern innovations, great return to the liberated territories, clean environment and green growth country. The above-mentioned national priorities are of particular importance to the fulfillment of our commitments arising from transforming our world 2030 agenda for sustainable development of the United Nations. Besides, by the recent presidential decrees, the government has been tasked to develop smart city and smart village concept, as well as to draft the digital transformation concept. Worthwhile to mention that in January this year, Center for Analysis and Coordination of the Fourth Industrial Revolution was established under the Ministry of Economy, with major aim to coordinate efforts related to adoption of the Fourth Industrial Revolution technologies and digital economy in our country. Pursuant to the founding document signed between the government of Azerbaijan and World Economic Forum on March 30th, the mentioned center is also hosting the Azerbaijani affiliate of the World Economic Forum's network of the Centers for Industrial Revolution. The Center for Industrial Revolution Azerbaijan has already become operational on April this year, and it is planned that the affiliate center will be mostly concentrating on artificial intelligence, Internet of Things, digital economy and trade, related issues and projects. In the meantime, we were delighted to hear about joint initiative of the World Economic Forum and CAREC Institute called Digital CAREC. We hope that this initiative will be further supported and developed to promote digital trade and investments among CAREC member countries and to unleash full potential of the Fourth Industrial Revolution technologies in our region. Within CAREC program, we often discuss the regional connectivity. Being an important transportation hub in the region, Azerbaijan is continuously improving cross-border and transit procedures and logistics, digitalizing logistic systems and trade processes. Dear friends, you may know that the new era has arrived for the region and particularly for Azerbaijan. The rehabilitation and development of the territories liberated from almost 30 years long occupation by neighboring Armenia, including establishment of the necessary infrastructure, enabling incentives for business development and implementation of new transport and economic corridors, especially the Zangezur corridor, are among the list of priorities on our economic agenda for years to come. These activities will certainly contribute to the enhancement of regional cooperation. We are currently intensively working to fight against pandemic. In January 2021, vaccination strategy against COVID-19 for years 2021-22 in Azerbaijan was adopted. And since 18 January, a vaccination process of population was launched and is being successfully implemented. As of 2nd May 2021, 1.5 million people have been vaccinated, which consists a bit over 15% of country population. In the view of pandemic and complicated global economic processes, undoubtedly, digitalization will have practical value in post-pandemic environment, and efficient transformation will support and speed up achieving program's objectives, contributing to the prosperity in the whole CAREC region. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Jabarov. May I now call on Mr. Tom Standage, who will serve as a moderator for today's session.
Thank you very much, Director General Zhukov. I am Tom Standage, Deputy Editor at The Economist, and our topic today is reimagining regional cooperation through digital transformation. We have a distinguished lineup of speakers, as we've heard. We have 2 panel discussions, but before we start, I'm going to provide some brief introductory remarks to set the scene. So I've been writing about the social and economic impact of technology for more than 20 years at The Economist, and digital transformation and how it can be harnessed for the benefit of society by driving social and economic development is a topic of particular interest to me. For a long time, one of the big challenges in this field was separating cause and effect. Do rich countries simply have more technology because they are rich, or does having more technology help countries expand their economies? A series of studies in the early 2000s demonstrated the potential of digital technology, and in particular mobile phones and internet access, to accelerate economic growth. A pioneering analysis of fish prices, for example, on the coast of India by Robert Jensen of Harvard University showed how access to mobile networks made markets more efficient, eliminated waste, reduced prices, and increased fishermen's profits. Information makes markets work, and markets improve welfare, Mr. Jensen concluded. More recently, a study led by Christine Zhengwei Zhang, an economist at the World Bank, in 2009 examined the impact of mobile phones and internet access in 120 countries, and it found that an extra 10 phones per 100 people in a typical developing country was correlated with a 0.8 percentage point increase in GDP growth. For internet access, the increase in GDP growth was as much as 1.4 percentage points. So we have strong evidence that allowing information to move more freely helps make markets more efficient and unleashes entrepreneurship. And this has a direct impact on economic growth. These sorts of findings have led governments and development agencies around the world to focus on boosting connectivity through things like liberalizing telecoms, through rolling out village phone projects, and so forth. And a lot of progress has been made in the last decade or two. But even now, there's a lot of scope for improving coverage. Mobile phone penetration varies widely within the CAREC region, with fewer than 75 subscriptions per 100 people in Afghanistan, Pakistan, and Uzbekistan, but more than 150 subscriptions per 100 inhabitants in, say, Turkmenistan. Regional connectivity and access speeds could also be boosted through projects such as TASIM, the Trans-Eurasian Information Superhighway. But in the past decade, the focus has shifted to other ways beyond just connectivity in which digital technologies can boost development. So let's consider some of those. First and foremost has been the rise of mobile money, mobile payments, and mobile banking, all delivered via mobile devices. The most famous pioneer in this area was the M-Pesa scheme in Kenya. But more recently, mobile payment schemes based on mobile devices and super apps pioneered in the People's Republic of China have become the dominant paradigm. At the same time, the range of financial services being delivered by mobile devices has expanded beyond payments to include savings, insurance, loans, and other services. All of this reduces friction, saves time, and brings more people into the formal economy and thus into the tax system. And we can see within the CAREC region, excluding the People's Republic of China, the proportion of adults with mobile money accounts is highest in Mongolia with 38% and Pakistan with 14%, both of which are above the global average of 10%. Another area where technology can boost growth is e-commerce. In the past decade, the People's Republic of China has become the global leader in e-commerce, and more than a quarter of its retail sales now happen online. Buying and selling online drives growth by making it easier for buyers and sellers to find each other. But in many developing countries, according to the United Nations, the growth of e-commerce is being held back by factors like the lack of affordable internet access, over-reliance on cash payments, lack of trust, poor digital literacy, and government's failure to remove regulatory barriers. Another area where digital transformation can boost growth is e-government. This makes it easier for people and companies to apply for permits, register property, claim benefits, pay taxes, and so on. And the e-government leader within the CAREC region is Kazakhstan, which ranks higher than Japan, the People's Republic of China, and Sweden in the provision of online services. It's a reminder that performance in e-government is not simply a function of wealth. The UN notes that all customs declarations in Kazakhstan have been processed electronically since 2018. Another area of opportunity is electronic learning, e-learning. The pandemic has highlighted the strengths and weaknesses of online education as school closures force students in many countries to switch to remote learning. Lack of access to broadband connectivity disrupted the education of many students. But a lasting legacy of the pandemic may be to accelerate the adoption of online education, because when you have the right technology and the right materials, it can work very well. And it's also the logical way to enable workers to acquire new skills later in life in response to the technological shifts we may be seeing in the workplace as a result of things like the fourth industrial revolution. So the main ways that digital technology can boost growth are connectivity, mobile finance, e-commerce, e-government, and e-learning. And governments can encourage all of these things through their policies, through things like deregulation of telecoms markets, modernizing banking regulations, and so on. But there are even greater opportunities to drive growth if governments choose to work together on a regional basis. And we have many examples of this from around the world. For example, the Nordic countries' pioneering regional telecoms network in the 1980s, NMT, which led to the emergence of Nokia and Ericsson as global telecoms equipment powerhouses. Or, for example, the East African community's regional visa scheme, or the European Union's harmonization of trade and other activities within its internal markets. So we can see the potential of regional cooperation. So how might CAREC members benefit from cooperation in their use of digital technologies? If we consider each of the 5 clusters of the CAREC 2030 strategy in turn, here are some potential areas of opportunity. The first area is economic and financial stability. A recent report from the CAREC Institute noted that the region trails the world and other regions on financial inclusion, but it has immense potential for financial inclusion by harnessing financial technologies. Coordinated regulatory reform could encourage the use of these technologies to boost growth. In some parts of the world, we've seen that mobile money systems have been unable to connect to each other. The CAREC region has the opportunity to leapfrog this problem of interoperability by promoting regional interoperability of mobile payment and banking systems. And this could smooth cross-border transactions, strengthen regional financial integration, and promote stability. The second area is trade, tourism, and economic corridors. Again, this is an area where coordinated regulatory reform could encourage adoption of technology, and this could promote e-commerce. Other practical steps that could be taken to boost regional trade include digitizing supply chains using common standards and promoting inter-regional travel through the introduction of a Silk Road visa. Both of these would require interoperability of systems and standards, but the pandemic may be a helpful catalyst for change because it already requires border procedures to be constantly revised and enhanced and updated. One challenge with integration of regional trade is a lack of data, and this gap could perhaps be filled by establishing a regional body to gather relevant data. The third area is infrastructure and connectivity. Energy, aviation, and telecoms are 3 areas where there's scope for technical enhancements and regional cooperation. In energy, that would involve the harmonization of regulatory frameworks and technical standards for cross-border connectivity with power and trading in power, coupled with knowledge sharing around low-carbon technologies. And this could improve the affordability and resilience of energy supplies while also reducing carbon emissions. In aviation, upgrading regional airports to support contactless technology and digital ticketing would streamline travel both within the CAREC region and with the rest of the world. And in telecoms, the region might consider what the East African community did when it tried to reduce or eliminate mobile roaming charges. And that project strongly contributed to integrated economic activity in the region by enabling cheaper cross-border communication. Agriculture and water is the fourth area. A regional data repository for disease surveillance and monitoring of animal products could facilitate regional trade by allowing closer integration of regional and global value chains. This could build on existing initiatives to introduce common sanitary and phytosanitary measures. Another potential area for cooperation is to address gaps in the provision and analysis of weather data and other predictive tools for farmers. This might also take into account regional water distribution, basin management, and storage. Finally, human development. Greater use of digital platforms could boost the development of skills and integrate the regional labour market. A regional job search system could help match workers to jobs more efficiently. It could also provide valuable information about the availability or shortage of skills in particular fields. The pandemic has highlighted the potential of remote learning technologies, and it could provide the catalyst for cross-border cooperation on higher education, adult learning, and technical and vocational training. A similar approach could also be taken in healthcare, where telehealth technology allows for remote consultation, sharing of resources and expertise, and greater cooperation between specialists across the region. Once again, the pandemic could serve as a catalyst for regional cooperation in this respect. So there is clearly plenty of scope for cooperation between CAREC members in the field of digital transformation. So now to the part of this session a lot of us have been waiting for, our panel discussions with our distinguished speakers. We have two panels. The first is on challenges and opportunities for digital cooperation, and the second is on the role of CAREC in promoting public-private partnerships to deepen digital transformation in the region. Viewers who are joining us online are invited to submit questions at the right-hand side of the screen by pressing the Q&A button. And you can also vote on the questions that have already been submitted. The questions with the highest number of votes may stand a better chance of being answered by the speakers. And we plan to take a couple of questions from the audience at the end of each discussion. Before we start, I would like to remind our speakers to please keep to the 3-minute time limit in responding to the questions. And this will ensure that we get to hear everybody during the discussions. So let's begin the first panel on challenges and opportunities for digital cooperation. And I'm going to address the first question to Dr. Bandar Hajar, the President of the Islamic Development Bank. And here's the question, Dr. Hajar. Where are the greatest opportunities, do you think, for CAREC member countries to collaborate on regional initiatives as part of their digital transformation? And what are the barriers to greater cooperation?
Thank you so much, and it is a great honor and pleasure to participate in this high-level session. Opportunities bound and barriers can be overcome through multilateral cooperation. To start with, integrating the use of digitization across the spectrum of CAREC operations is a cross-cutting priority for us. To improve the quality of public services, support private sector growth, and enhance resilience, especially during COVID-19 pandemic. We all saw that digital technologies play a crucial role in keeping economies and societies resilient. Most importantly, digital technologies have been instrumental in monitoring and understanding the spread of the disease and improving healthcare coordination among public health institutions, as you have mentioned earlier. Furthermore, digital communication platforms have helped maintain business continuity, keep students in education, provide access to certain health services through healthcare. All these technological solutions have played an integral role during the pandemic, so it is now clear that their adoption will persist. As the crisis evolves, our development priority needs to be realigned with the realities of the post-COVID-19 world. And to do that, we have to study lessons learned from the COVID-19 crisis carefully and reinforce our joint effort to translate them into opportunities. The first lesson from the crisis is that the current challenges are beyond the capacity of any single country, and solidarity is the only way to overcome these challenges. In Central Asia, CAREC is already a well-functioning cooperation platform which lays a solid foundation to address the new challenge of the post-COVID-19 world, especially from the digital transformation perspective. In this regard, digital infrastructure, connectivity, harmonization, regulatory policy, enhancement of digital skills are the primary areas we deem essential. These three areas have critical roles in leveraging the existing momentum of digital transformation in a large segment of societies in Central Asia. However, to make that happen, we need to pay attention to specific barriers and challenges. First, the existing divide in access to digital technologies is a significant issue of concern for all of us, since there are substantial disparity in access to the internet access across the CAREC region. CAREC countries still need to bridge the digital divide, which require ICT investment and knowledge service to improve accessibility and efficiency in public service, upgrade productivity, enable smoother people-to-people contact, and support integration in regional and global value chains. So we could also add the lack of interoperability and of existing system across the countries, and insufficient private sector engagement in digital infrastructure investment. We have already taken action to move to make this happen in CAREC region. To give one specific example, the bank approved in 2017 $273 million project for Turkmenistan to upgrade the country's ICT infrastructure to be catalyst for the next milestone project in the region. As we continue extending our support to Central Asia, we are also glad to know that the CAREC program already provides a coherent framework to synergize the effort, including the digital information. Let me reiterate that the Islamic Development Bank is committed to continue to do so. It is part of this partnership as we move forward, and I wish the meeting a great success toward this fruitful discussion.
Thank you very much indeed. Okay, so the opportunities there for cooperation are in infrastructure, connectivity, skills, but the barriers are in connectivity, interoperability, and a lack of private sector involvement. I'd like to turn now, please, to Mr. Saeed Ashraf Siddiqui, Joint Secretary of the Economic Affairs Division for Pakistan, to hear his perspective on the question. So where do you think the greatest opportunities are, and where do you think the barriers are to greater cooperation?
Thank you. Good afternoon, Excellencies and distinguished delegates. First of all, I would like to thank the government of the Republic of Azerbaijan as the chair of the CAREC program for 2021 and the Asian Development Bank for jointly organizing this very important session. The rapid development and spread of digital technologies across the globe are changing every aspect of people's lives, business, and society. This inevitable change promises greater economic development, productivity, connectivity, financial inclusion, and access to trade and public services. Following the global trend, Pakistan has achieved significant milestones in its journey to digital transformation. It includes setting up of dedicated institutions and allied infrastructure to spearhead various IT initiatives, formulation of policy frameworks, and implementation of a number of successful IT-based programs for provision of services to the citizens. The government of Pakistan is committed to continue this momentum to enhance application of technology in public processes. Now turning to opportunities for collaboration. This region has the potential to emerge as the center for trade and commerce in order to achieve higher levels of economic growth and reduce poverty. The pandemic-induced changes in our lifestyles can act as a catalyst to promote e-commerce and speedy custom clearances. Electronic single window trade facilitation projects are the way forward to intensify trade and reduce cross-border delays. Pakistan's single window project is in the advanced stages of preparation and will soon be rolled out. Digital transformation can be instrumental in realizing the great tourism potential of the CAREC countries. The creation and promotion of a common umbrella brand, Visit Silk Road, and development of a CAREC tourism web portal are steps in the right directions to share tourism-related information and generate business opportunities for the private sector. We need to build on such initiatives by introducing e-visa regimes and e-services for promotion of tourism. In the context of the pandemic, it is important to improve our disease preparedness systems by using digital technologies. We can use digital platforms to standardize the health sector, raise awareness about disease prevention, and exchange country experiences, especially with regard to the ongoing vaccination drive. In the education sector, the pandemic-related restrictions necessitated online teaching methods through technology. CAREC countries can collaboratively develop digital curriculum, e-learning modules, digital libraries, and lessons for our schools, colleges, and universities. Now, just to highlight a few barriers to cooperation. The foremost challenge is varying degrees of access to ICT tools and services, and lack of digital infrastructure within the CAREC region. It is therefore important to improve digital infrastructure and connectivity at a reasonable cost to reap the benefits of this change. While use of digital technologies offers new avenues for labor participation, it also prevents the vulnerable population without infrastructure or skills to benefit from new opportunities. We therefore need to make concerted efforts to bridge this digital divide by investing in digital literacy and skill development programs and reducing gender differences in ICT use to foster inclusion and equitable participation in the job market. The CAREC countries need to ramp up engagements for greater cooperation in this critical area. Setting up a dedicated working group, nomination of country sectoral focal persons, and commissioning a study through CAREC Institute to explore key areas of cooperation based on digital gap analysis could be good starting points. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So once again, lots of areas of opportunity identified there: e-commerce, tourism, disease preparedness, and so forth, and also education, but also barriers, once again, with digital access and literacy. I'd like to ask Mr. Xixin Chen, Vice President, Operations 1 at the Asian Development Bank, for his perspective on this. How can CAREC facilitate cooperation between member countries during their digital transformation, and how can CAREC help its member countries overcome these sorts of barriers when it comes to connectivity, digital literacy, private sector investment, and so on?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Standage. Let me join you to thank the government of Azerbaijan, and also welcome our distinguished participants to this meeting. Taking this opportunity, I'd like to just share quickly 3 points. First of all, we have seen the pandemic accelerated the digital transformation in our CAREC countries. However, as our ministers mentioned before, we are also encountering many fundamental barriers, such as they mentioned, the considerably varies in regions' e-readiness, inadequate digital infrastructure in some CAREC countries, lack of harmonization regulatory framework and the policies across our region, and also enlarge the digital divide. I think it's also there. Increase the risk of digital data privacy and security, as well as some problem of digital taxation. I think those are the some key challenges there. Then it comes to my second point, that is the CAREC program can and also should take the role on leading cooperation moving ahead strategically, I think. Utilizing ITC or digital transformation is a cross-cutting issue in our CAREC strategy 2030. As you know, this year we are working on a CAREC digital strategy to adopt a holistic digital transformation. We all see the COVID-19 pandemic highlights the importance and also opportunities for digitalization, not only in responding to the pandemic, but also in all aspects of our life and working. Digital for regional public goods and global public goods is overwhelming, I think. In addition to that, digital for inclusion, for say no one should left behind, digital for human capital development, for instance, education and job creation, and also digital for the green growth, digital financing for all the areas. I think all of this need to be strategically addressed. So CAREC program is the right platform to function this role. Then I come to my last point, the third point. I believe CAREC program with its convening power should strive for breakthrough in some very critical areas. Let me mention just several of them. First, mobilizing financial resources for digital infrastructure, specifically in poor countries and also rural areas where digital infrastructure becomes a binding constraint in reducing the digital divide. Like children cannot have remote learning when they're locked down in those areas. Secondly, coordinating member countries' efforts on digital policy harmonization and mutual recognition across our region. Without removing policy barriers, digital transformation could only be isolated and segmented. Thirdly, I think promoting sector initiatives like e-tourism, e-trade, e-commerce, e-health, and also e-learning as well. Fourthly, I think it's important is to promoting private sector participation. More importantly, steering private investment to enhance digital financial inclusion. So lots of practice there as well. Last but not least, I think we can, the CAREC program also can help to explore a better international taxation mechanism to avoid tax-based erosion and profit shifting, as well as to encourage the digital technology competition. I think those is our CAREC program can play the critical roles. So with that, let me pause here. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you very much. Once again, many areas of opportunity identified, but also barriers that need to be overcome. So now that we've heard from our first three panelists about where all of these areas of opportunity are, and also some of the challenges, let's zoom in a little bit. What are the most important areas of common focus and opportunity among CAREC members when it comes to digital transformation? So what do the CAREC members have in common the most, and how can they work together in these areas, and how can CAREC help them to work together in these areas that we just heard about, things like e-tourism, trade, commerce, regulatory harmonization, and so on? I would like to address that question to Mr. Mohammed Khalid Payenda, Acting Minister of Finance for Afghanistan.
Thank you very much, Tom. Good afternoon, good morning, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. I'm honored to be here and talk about this. I want to thank ADB and Minister Jabbar from Azerbaijan for co-hosting us on this important initiative. I believe all has been said and done on this. So I'll take references from what you said in your remarks, Tom, and just now the VP beautifully elaborated some of these points. I'll go by the three main principles that CAREC has set on good neighbors, good partners, and good prospects. We truly believe that there is a lot of prospect in the whole region. We, as Afghanistan, see it the benefits not just in economic spheres, but going beyond to security and stability in the whole region. I think some of the key areas that I see for common focus and collaboration in this area is digital infrastructure. I think the digital data and trade could be improved and has enormous potential in this region. On financial inclusion and banking sector, as well as mobile payments, we rely on financial institutions beyond this region to do trade with our neighbors. So that's another key area. And collaboration in this area can improve counter-financing of terrorism and anti-money laundering prospects as well. Health is a major area where digital transformation can benefit us a lot, and also trade and customs. Trade and customs, not just the collaboration on infrastructure, but also making sure that there is freedom of data to ensure that there are no evasions, but also the real amounts of trade is captured. And finally, on education, there is a lot can be done within the region on collaboration on education. I think a digital strategy that the CAREC is rightly focusing on this year would our expectation would be that this focuses on these areas to address these issues. We see a lot of potential in the whole CAREC region. One point since Excellency Dr. Bandar Hajar and VP and also from EBRD are that what can be done is CAREC looking into collaboration beyond just ADB and collaboration between development actors, so that we make most use of the resources available. Thank you very much. I look forward to the rest of the discussions.
Great, thank you. I would like to now address the same question, I think, to Mr. Oybek Shagazatov, head of the Department for Cooperation with International Financial Institutions at the Ministry of Investments and Foreign Trade in Uzbekistan. What's your perspective on this, and where do you think the most important areas of common focus and opportunity lie?
Здравствуйте, уважаемый господин Shikhinchan, уважаемый Minister Jabarov.
Good afternoon, dear Mr. Jabarov, Mr. Shikhinchan, and dear ladies and gentlemen, participants of this important event. Let me first of all express my gratitude to the Asian Development Bank for the organization of this very important event. And regarding the question that you raised, I would like to say that the digitalization process within the CAREC region, in order to be able to do that, we need to learn the experience and best practices of the developed economies. And the pandemic of the COVID-19 made it clear for us that everything depends on a digital economy, and the services that were not available for decades, they became available within a few months, and the members of the CAREC countries also need to develop their access and connectivity in all of the areas, including agriculture, education, healthcare, economy, transport, and communication. And we create new opportunities for cooperation through the creation of trade platforms for the Central Asian region and inclusion of the automated payment systems for the transportation of freight by rail and road. Third, the development of the electronic systems of metering of water and other resources in the agricultural sector. Also, we need to support experts in the information and communication technology sectors. For example, in the ITC sector of Uzbekistan, there are more than 60,000 experts involved in this sector. So we are focused on training and our programming specialists through the implementation of a new program, 1 million IT experts in Uzbekistan. And we also focused on the development of the improvement of ameliorative processes and improving productivity of agricultural lands. So the most efficient implementation of business processes will provide opportunities for the leapfrog development in all of the areas of economy. Over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed for that. Well, it sounds like there are quite a few common themes emerging here. There seems to be a fair amount of consensus that you can't do all of these other wonderful things until you've fixed the problem of access and you've done more to close the digital divide and build infrastructure and so on. What I'd like to end this panel with is the final question, which is if there had to be a single area on which to focus, a single promising area in which to develop a pilot project to demonstrate the value of digital transformation in promoting regional cooperation, what would that area be? So I'd like to start by addressing that question to Mr. Muhammad Geldi Serdarov, the Minister at the Ministry of Finance and Economy in Turkmenistan.
Thank you very much, dear participants of the CAREC meeting. And I would like to express my appreciation to all of the participants for your time. And I would like to wish all of you good health and productive work. And I would like to take this opportunity to congratulate Mr. Yevgeny Zhukov with his appointment to the position of the Director General at the Asian Development Bank. And I would like to wish him success in his endeavors. And I would like to briefly describe the stance of Uzbekistan in terms of development of the CAREC region through digitalization. Based on the estimates of the international institutions, the digitalization is a key driver of economic growth, and the relevance and prospects of the digital development of the economies of the region should be reflected in the main directions of the implementation of the CAREC digital strategy. And the implementation of digital technologies in the CAREC region involves a collaborative and proactive approach, including a shared vision agreed upon by all private and public sector stakeholders, common strategies, objectives, and long-term measures. And we believe that the transition to the shared digital platforms will foster innovation and pave the way for generating regional dividends for all countries in the region. And digital economy increases the efficiency of trade transactions. It improves transparency and accountability, eliminates delays, and reduces risks of all kinds. Reducing transaction costs associated with the movement of non-digital goods and services, for example, through regional customs reforms, would, in our opinion, have significant economic impact, including stimulation of the growth of digital trade in the countries of the region. Digital trade and customs solutions include online export and import processes that accelerate cross-border trade in goods and services, as well as related services, including logistics, customs clearance, and licensing and certification services as well. And in particular, the single window system brings together all government agencies involved in the export and import procedures, allowing companies to submit their documents electronically from any location, wherever they are. And as a pilot project for the CAREC member countries, we propose to consider developing cooperation towards reducing internal and cross-border barriers to trade in goods, as well as promoting sustainable transport and improving transport connectivity. Trade and transit facilitation should be coupled with more effective official control measures. So the facilitation of these procedures in trade and transit will result to improvement in the procedures of border control. So we suggest the following steps to be taken to launch the proposed pilot project. First, we need to strengthen the regional cooperation through coordination of the ongoing regional trade facilitation reforms, as well as private sector involvement through the establishment of a dialogue platform under the CAREC program. Second, we need to increase CAREC's involvement in implementing trade and transport facilitation conventions and agreements through joint studies, including the application of regulations that influence the regional cooperation under the CAREC program. Third, we need to introduce innovative tools for simplifying border crossing procedures and introduce a unified model of checkpoints and related procedures, as well as introduce an electronic queue at the border system, assisting in implementing the framework standards for customs clearance and control in the CAREC member countries, which should be actively pursued. And I would like to note that the implementation of the region's digital agenda will require the creation of expert platforms, as well as a network of competence centers and excellence centers, formation of a pool of initiatives and projects, and building partnerships with those who have chosen the path of digital transformation. Dear ladies and gentlemen, deploying the CAREC digital integration platform and ensuring international operability in the region will give impetus to the development of the next generation of effectively interacting systems, ensuring the creation of a common digital economic space, as well as development of the digital economy in the CAREC region. In conclusion, I would like to thank everyone for their active cooperation and your dedicated effort. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you very much. A very clear answer there. Focus on reducing the barriers at the borders between CAREC countries and basically integrate them to improve cross-border trade in both goods and services, and with coordinated customs regulations and so on. So very straightforward answer there. I'd now like to turn to Mr. Sultan Akhmatov, the Deputy Minister for the Ministry of the Economy and Finance in Kyrgyzstan, for his perspective on where we can have the single most promising area to develop a pilot project. So what's your perspective?
Спасибо, Tom.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Tom. I would like to greet all of the participants of this webinar, which is very important for all of us, especially in the context of the second wave of the COVID-19 pandemic. All of the issues that we are discussing today, they are quite crucial and relevant. And I will briefly tell you the following. As the single most promising area for pilot projects is the electronic commerce. And the pandemic of the COVID-19 has highlighted the importance of pursuing the development of e-commerce, although there are some challenges related to the various levels of development in the region, and of which in the region is the pioneer and the champion. The People's Republic of China is the pioneer and the champion in the region in terms of development of electronic commerce, and the development of electronic commerce would allow us to overcome all of the barriers that hamper movement of goods and is a barrier to exchange of human resources. And through the development of e-commerce, we will be able to get rid of the need for physical interaction, and even in the lockdown context, we will be able to keep on promoting our economic development. So I believe that we need to implement this pilot. And as our colleagues said before me, this issue has been included into the development strategy of the CAREC program. And for your reference, I would like to say that the Kyrgyz Republic has also adopted the e-commerce development strategy till 2030. And we need to learn from the best experience of our neighbor countries to be able to leapfrog, and by the example of the best practices, which is applicable in our context. So my suggestion is to look into this direction. Thank you. Over to you.
Great, thank you very much. So once again, a endorsement for the idea of pursuing closer ties on digital trade in both goods and services. I'd like to go back now to Mr. Jabarov for the perspective from Azerbaijan. So what's your take on this?
Yes, thank you very much, Tom. I'd like to join in my assessment to remarks of my esteemed colleagues, also ADB representative who spoke on the subject. I think Azerbaijan would underline that the development of an integrated transit and transport information system may serve as a very tangible tool, which would not only enhance the transportation, cross-border transaction, transit potential, unlock transit potential of our countries, but I think will also lead to two important elements. One is to a closer integration of economies, more freer movement of goods, people, and actual ideas. And secondly, to unlocking a number of related issues ranging from customs procedure to value added services that can be added online, and even will impact issues which was mentioned in ADB VP President remarks. He spoke about digitalization of taxation, international taxation, and the transformation. And the truth is that especially in the areas such as customs interaction, in the areas of information exchange between authorities, I think having and starting with a link with a tool which can be added by modules as the cooperation and elements grow, this, in my opinion, can serve as a, if it's not a low-hanging fruit, but it's definitely a product that we can achieve working together. And I think if the initiative can be formulated and put together as a sort of action plan, then it will be up for CAREC member countries to do everything it can. Azerbaijan has already established United Transit Operator for all cargo transiting through Azerbaijan in any direction. We now are able to provide a single window, and it is backed. It is actual front office for the digital information system that at this stage we develop nationally. But of course, it will need to, in order to be more suitable, it will need to be built up further. Thank you very much.
Right, thank you very much indeed. Very clear consensus there that this is the way forward and is the most promising area for a pilot project. Now, we did promise to take some questions from the audience, and we have one question that has been voted up the largest number of times, and this is to do with how the digital divide can best be closed. So the question is, how can you overcome the digital divide within the CAREC region countries? I would like to ask both the representative for the Kyrgyz Republic and for Afghanistan to comment on this, and then we're going to hear finally from the representative for the AIIB. But perhaps we could start with the Kyrgyz Republic representative, Mr. Sultan Akhmatov. How do you think the CAREC member countries should address this problem of connectivity and closing the digital divide?
Thank you very much, Tom. And I believe that this is a very important question, and this divide is mostly related to infrastructure, to the existing infrastructure. So we need to develop infrastructure. If we take a look at the context of institutional capacity, in this regard, the development is faster than the development of physical infrastructure. So I believe that the employment of integrated approaches will allow us to eliminate this divide among the countries. And so by developing and creating and developing the infrastructure, we will be able to adapt our capacity and integrate our systems across Central Asia. Thank you. Over to you.
Okay, thank you. And what's your perspective on this? If we could hear from the representative from Afghanistan. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Tom. Apologies for the blackout earlier. Proves the point that we have to invest in the fiber optic here, and from my end, I think it's both structural and institutional issues. I think it requires working on clear list of policies to see amongst the CAREC countries for a streamlined position. I can give you an example of trade. Infrastructure is an issue, but in most areas it's not a bottleneck. The binding bottleneck is a lack of collaboration between the neighbors. We have minimum amount of infrastructure that could allow regional trade. I think it's the same issue here. We need to invest in the infrastructure, but whatever is invested in the CAREC countries should be geared towards regional connectivity rather than internal connectivity at the first step. So prioritizing that because it requires a lot of investment, but then collaboration on institutional and policy issues would help make sure that it gets up and running. Thank you.
Great. Well, we have many examples of that sort of cooperation from other parts of the world, which the CAREC member countries could perhaps benefit from. The one that strikes me is the East African community, where there is not just a single visa that allows people to move between those countries, but there is also, in effect, no roaming charges. It's treated like a single network by many of the network operators, and that really has done a lot to boost economic integration and boost trade and integration in that area. Brilliant. Okay, we're now going to move on to the second panel discussion. So thank you very much indeed to our panelists in the first for all your contributions. The second panel discussion is on the role of CAREC in promoting public-private partnerships to deepen digital transformation. Once again, you're invited to submit questions as we go along, and we hope to get a couple of questions in at the end. Once again, I'd like to remind our speakers to please keep to the 3-minute time limit in responding to these questions so that we get to hear from everybody. So the first question, as I mentioned before, I would like to address to Mr. Joachim von Amsberg, the Vice President for Policy and Strategy at the AIIB. And that is, how can CAREC more effectively facilitate public-private dialogue and help to strengthen the participation of the private sector to mobilize technical and financial resources that are needed, as we've heard, for digital transformation? So how can CAREC help with that?
Thank you very much, and thanks for inviting AIB to join this discussion, which I really want to congratulate you for picking this topic, which is so much focused on economic opportunities. And we at AIB are still a very young multilateral development bank, but we have given ourselves the mission to finance infrastructure for tomorrow, and that's infrastructure that's technology informed, that provides regional connectivity and mobilizes private capital. So it's very much aligned with the topic of this session, and we're very keen to work with our members in the region. Now, your question of how to really facilitate the dialogue and the inclusion of the private sector is extremely important, because so much capital is available if tapped appropriately to help promote the agenda. And so much innovation and productivity gains can be had by harnessing the private sector appropriately. And I would like to divide the agenda into two parts. One is the hardware, the second one is the software. The hardware is the connectivity, the networks, the fiber optics, the satellites, the towers, all of that. That hardware is critical for connecting the entire population and all economic actors to digital services, and is critical to overcome the digital divide by serving the currently unserved. Now, private sector capital is generally quite readily available to invest in digital infrastructure if the regulatory framework is set up well and is set up to, in particular, ensure that the sort of digital divide is bridged and the unserved are included in the service. So here, I think plenty of lessons can be learned from other infrastructure sectors, which have faced quite similar challenges, whether it's private investment in water companies or energy. There are decades of experience of successful and less successful regulation to bring private capital into those services. I think in digital infrastructure, it's a little easier. There's a lot of willingness and readily available private capital there. But in terms of the regulatory framework, plenty of lessons I think can be learned of how to introduce obligations to provide universal coverage without strangulating private investors with excessive regulation that will, in the end, just curtail their drive. Now, let me turn to the software side. And by that, I mean the companies that create the ecosystem of tech companies, whether it's in fintech or infratech or other areas, the ecosystem of the private companies that put their entrepreneurship, their energy, their innovation, and their capital into the sector. Here, I think, again, regulation plays a key role, but in particular, I think a key role in preventing regulation that stifles competition and stifles innovation. These are new areas, so private companies need some space to experiment, to bring new ideas, try new approaches. And even though some regulation is necessary, for example, in the financial sector, there are very interesting experiences in other parts of the world with regulatory sandboxes where the standard regulations are sort of put aside and a special dialogue is established between the regulators and the industry to develop really appropriate, innovative approaches for regulation of those areas. The last point I want to make is that for development of the ecosystem of companies that provide digital services, scale is quite important. And this is where I think the regional cooperation that is the topic of this discussion is highly appropriate. Not every, especially smaller country, will be able to have the full economy of scale in each of the subsectors where we talked about opportunities today. So it is quite desirable and quite conceivable that there will be specialization. But that scale, where let's say the ecosystem in one country can serve the entire region in a certain subsector, is only possible if the barriers between countries are removed. And this leads me to endorse and resonate with the comments made by many previous speakers who talk about the need to reduce customs barriers, other regulatory barriers. Can, for example, medical services be provided across boundaries? We talked already about trade. But these are the kinds of regulatory issues where public and private sector need to work together very closely to facilitate the growth of the ecosystem. And let me just mention as an inspiration what has been done in other parts of the world. we have invested in a satellite network in Indonesia to bring high-speed internet to thousands of unserved islands through a private investor who, within the appropriate public regulatory service regulation, provides high-speed internet services to those remote areas. On the ecosystem side, again, let me refer to ASEAN, the Southeast Asia, where I think you've seen over the last just few years a very exciting ecosystem of scale develop where companies are serving a regional market. Regional companies serving a regional market based in different cities of the Southeast Asia region. So I think there are plenty of interesting examples to inspire each other in terms of growing this agenda and building very strong public and private partnership. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much indeed. And yes, in telecoms in particular, we do have many examples from around the world of that the CAREC region could learn from, and in particular about how the importance of scale and countries working together can mean that smaller countries can be helped along. Another good example of scale, obviously, is the success of the rollout of mobile telecoms in China. So I'd like to turn now to Mr. Changwu Zhou, the Director General for ADB WBG at the Department for International Economic and Financial Cooperation for the People's Republic of China. And what's your take on how CAREC can more effectively facilitate public-private dialogue in this area?
Thank you, Chair. Thanks also go to Shi Qing, the VP for ADB, who is my good friend. Well, it is quite opportune for us to have a theme discussion on digital transformation here at these ADB annual meetings, though we are still on holiday. Obviously, we all sides should prepare ourselves for the post-COVID-19 era and make joint efforts to promote digital transformation for CAREC members in order to spur the region's economic and social recovery and growth. In the whole process, we believe the PPP modality will have a critical role to play for such a transformation. I have four observations. One, build consensus and strengthen strategic guidance. Broad consensus and strong support from the government and the society are key to engaging the private sector. CAREC should formulate the digital economy strategy and the action plan to provide strategic guidance for the private sector based on CAREC 2030 strategy, as mentioned by VP Chen, and also in line with the demands of the members. In addition, CAREC could further align its programs with the region's relevant development initiatives and involve both public and the private sector through CAREC forum, seminars, and others for better communication and cooperation. Second point, mobilize financial resources and facilitate digital infrastructure connectivity. In this sense, MDBs are better positioned to contribute as their funds have substantial cost advantage and a convenient power. CAREC should encourage ADB and other MDBs to scale up their investment in digital infrastructure and mobilize more other resources from both public and the private sectors. Meanwhile, CAREC could explore innovative ways to attract private capital, for example, through risk mitigation or guarantee fund, among other means, to lower investment risks. My third point is strengthen capacity building and bridge the digital divide, as repeatedly mentioned by the previous speakers. There is a huge need for digital talents and technology in developing countries. CAREC should help members speed up digital talent building by vocational education and knowledge sharing, and also by working in partnership with multilateral institutions such as the World Bank, ADB, AIB, IBD, and also CAREC Institute to benefit from the financial and expertise resources. My last point is to strengthen coordination of regulatory policies and optimize the business environment for digital economy. I would echo the points made by my previous speakers. This will promote the application and the development of digital technology. Certainly, CAREC will help to strengthen policy exchange and cooperation with such stakeholders as international institutions, national regulators, and labor organizations for better coordination in regulatory policies, in particular with regard to data security, information protection, and antitrust. All these efforts are meant to promote inclusive and prudent regulation and to create a more fair, just, and sound business environment for the goals of the digital economy. I thank you, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll get to the question of harmonizing standards and regulations and data sharing and that sort of thing in a moment. But first, following up on that point about the importance of the role of development banks in all of this, I would like to call upon Susanna Hargitay, the Managing Director for Central Asia for the EBRD. What's your perspective on where development banks can fit in here and facilitate this sort of public-private dialogue that's so necessary?
Thank you very much, Tom. Greetings to all participants. EBRD is not a novice in most of the CAREC region, but I am. So let me bring what you were suggesting, Tom, also some perspectives from where I used to work, which is Southeastern Europe, where we have been rolling out a couple of digital projects, but also responding to some of the comments made by the previous speakers. So first of all, yes, digital transformation is one of the top 3 priorities for the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development as well. This is both for direct financing, but also weaving it into at least every second investment we are making, whether it's for SME financing, whether it's a grid development, whether it's, again, financial institutions work. Now, when it comes to private sector participation, a couple of thoughts. My colleague from AIIB came from the hardware software side. Let me come from the protagonist side. So one that we would certainly like to explore, and it was also suggested just by the previous speaker, how to set up. I know you love, Tom, these workshops, but if they are well targeted, they can bring additional benefits among real economy participants like chambers of commerce, and they have been their knowledge and their requests have been put to very good use when it comes to regulations for logistics, e-certificates, whether it's phytosanitary, whether establishment of green corridors. So we need to take their views into account, but also, again, setting up e-commerce platforms, even on a regional basis. This is something that we are pioneering in Southeastern Europe. The other bit is the financial sector. So again, a workshop on how to bring, and other participants mentioned, closer together regulations. Somebody mentioned the regulatory sandbox, so that the financial sector could be incentivized through regulation to roll out mobile payments, mobile banking. First, it will not be cross-border, let's face the reality, but at least in the countries as they are rolled out. And then we shall get also to cross-border, because these regulatory issues are almost, and I will exaggerate here, foolproof of what needs to be taken into account. Colleagues already mentioned security, anti-money laundering. So again, this could be a fruitful discussion. Then another discussion should take place with respect to investors, operators. So when it comes, for instance, to broadband rollout, there are a lot of investors that are also operators who would be ready to invest, for instance, in last mile access, with the state investing in mid-mile and tendering out the operation of the full network when we are talking about outreach, obviously, beyond urban areas. This is how one could involve, basically, it's a form of a public-private partnership, if you agree with me, because it's not the full infra, not the full monte that the sovereign state would have to invest in, but you harness. And also the operations are continued. And again, we are happy to help also with contracts with such operators or tenders, which is the case. Another area where we would certainly see potential for private sector involvement is skills, education. We are setting up now, again in Southeastern Europe, a whole platform, yes, catering for various languages, that would provide niches for vocational training, also for digital training, once we have the access, of course, and we can get back to this digital divide, but also through vetted private sector education service providers. They exist. We use many of these consultancies as well to advise small and medium-sized enterprises of how to go digital. So again, using e-learning and private sector service providers, I believe participants may agree with me, it's another way of harnessing that knowledge. Now, the bravest we should be, and I don't know whether we are there, considering also private sector service providers for the various aspects of e-governance. Yes, we are conscious of national security concerns, of, again, data protection, but perhaps we could think about, and some of the participants mentioned, we call it e-agrar. So again, just the registration of who has what land, what is the crop production. It could already inform the governments of what kind of policies they have to formulate. It could provide the governments with access to agricultural producers. Could horribile dictu such a service be run by private sector service providers and provide such data? You're smiling, Tom, I know. Today I'm in an optimistic mood. But again, this can be done. There are also other kind of precedents that e-services for governments can also be harnessed. This is my very short kind of take on how we could develop further ideas of involvement of private sector into digitalization. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed for that perspective, and particularly the point that these are problems that have been solved through regional cooperation in other parts of the world. So the expertise is out there, and we have a template for the involvement of private companies in these areas. Once again, I know I keep going back to telecoms, but telecoms is a very interesting example. The expansion of access to telecoms around the world has always been the result of the opening up of telecoms markets to competition, very often to foreign operators and so on, but you know, as soon as you liberalize and allow more people in, access goes up and prices go down. You also talked there about the importance of knowledge sharing, not just between the public and private sector, but I think we should discuss the question of knowledge sharing and coordination within the region. So given the need for the harmonization of standards and data sharing and so forth that will be necessary to do things like integrate regional trade, how can CAREC help with that? How can it help with coordinating standards, with data management and with knowledge sharing, and with bringing in expertise from outside the region in all of those areas? To address that question, I would like to call upon Mr. Lasha Kutsushvili, the Minister of Finance for Georgia.
Thank you, Tom. If you look at the successful examples of regional integration, we will see that need of harmonization economic system is very important. As the promotion of regional trade and the formation of logistic corridor can be identified as the two main objectives of CAREC regional cooperation. The harmonization of administrative systems in these two areas is crucial. First is cross-border trade facilitation. And here I would like to mention one very important project that is strongly supported by ADB. This is an innovative idea of single customs checkpoint between Azerbaijan and Georgia. This is a project that creates respective hard infrastructure, but not only. The project will develop a digital infrastructure connected to the information system of both countries. We are confident that this will significantly case cross-border movement and possibly become a good model for the entire CAREC corridor. And the second is development of logistics corridor. Despite the apparent geographical advantages of the corridor, different legislation and diverse administrative systems make the corridor less attractive. However, this is where digital transformation can help again. Digital solutions for harmonization of standards, CAREC-wide coordinated data sharing system can be the element which might boost the potential of the corridor. In addition, countries should focus on reform aimed at deregulating of the sector vital for the corridor development and promoting the role of the private sector. Also, it's almost all countries of the region, state-owned enterprises can play an important role, especially in the development of the transport corridor. And I'd like to emphasize the importance of the reforming of the SOE sectors. This has the potential to bring the higher efficiency to the corridor. In all this area, we see the importance role of ADB. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much indeed. So it's a question of learning by doing, from the sound of things, and a couple of these pilot programs, if they go well, could potentially provide a model for the whole CAREC region. So that sounds like a very practical way forward. I'd now like to call upon Mr. Javklan Bold, the Minister of Finance for Mongolia, for his perspective on how CAREC can coordinate the harmonization in these important areas.
Your Excellency, Minister Mikhail Jabaro, dear Mr. Evgeny Joko, Moderator Mr. Tom Standage, and fellow panelists. Distinguished guests, it's my pleasure to attend the event. As a panelist, I'm Javklan, Minister of Finance of Mongolia. COVID-19 pandemic has been a huge challenge to countries all over the world. Mongolia was not an exception. The pandemic continues to pose significant challenges to our financial stability and the socio-economic condition, and the challenges are expected to continue for uncertain amount of the post-COVID-19 pandemic. Such uncertainty caused protectionism, the tendency toward greater state control or supervision, and the less trust in foreign supplies of goods. The initial instinctive reaction to the COVID-19 crisis last year by most countries was to look inwards and act alone. Countries have closed their borders, supply chains have been disrupted, and regional economic activity has fallen. Therefore, as a result, we must take comprehensive measures not only in the public health sector, but also to protect and revive the economy, balancing the support to the health sector and the economy. However, the current situation has proven that the bilateral and regional collaborative measures are necessary to address common issues, overcoming this difficult period and moving forward. In this term, CAREC, as the main platform for the Central Asian region, must play a key role for the economic and social interactions among member countries to mitigate the adverse impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic. Regional integration projects could assist countries jointly tackle the challenges of COVID-19. Such projects can implement collective measures which addresses not only the health sector, but also revives the stagnant economy. Any joint efforts to enhance regional economic activities, to accelerate the regional trade flow based on the transparent data would mitigate the existing downturn. Sharing data and experience on the public health sector, including the patient symptoms, treatment methods, post-treatment conditions, and health sector training. Even the management of the health facilities shall be crucial impetus for overcoming the pandemic. Moreover, member countries can benefit from continuing our collaboration through the CAREC platform in reviving regional economic activities. In relation to the trade sector, this crisis can be an opportunity for CAREC countries to encourage a new trade path within the region, including e-commerce, paperless trade. Such new development requires development of virtual platform and further involvement and interaction of members. Based on the transparent and cross-border data flows, regional countries could collaborate in easing their border service and to support trade flow within the region. We are certain that CAREC program can facilitate such projects and serve as a platform for data and experience sharing amongst the member countries to overcome this difficult period. I would like to express the full commitment of the government of Mongolia in implementing such measures and providing all necessary support in this matter. Thank you very much. I hope you all will stay safe and well.
Thank you very much indeed. And you make a very good point there that the pandemic has led to cooperation and sharing of best practice between many countries around the world on a regional basis, but also internationally. So for the final question, how can we apply this sort of learning from other countries that that are further ahead and have experienced the benefits of these sorts of changes? How can we apply that to digital transformation? So what can CAREC member countries learn from each other, but also what can they learn from countries outside the region about the best way to approach digital transformation, and who should they be trying to borrow from, and what should they be trying to borrow? To respond, I would like to first call on Mr. Nematullo Hikmatullo Zoda, the Assistant to the President of Tajikistan on economic issues. Over to you.
Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to express my appreciation to all of the participants for your time and effort and active participation in this discussion. I also would like to express my appreciation and gratitude to the government of Azerbaijan for the chairmanship in this program this year. And I would like to say that the CAREC program provides considerable support to all of the CAREC member countries to ensure sustainable development in the region for the development of technically sustainable and well-balanced decisions based on the best practices, as well as the strengthening of the open and inclusive platform of cooperation, including regular regional meetings such as the one that we have today. And regarding your question, I would like to say that regular ongoing dialogue and intergovernmental exchange of experience and best practices among members of the region, as well as countries outside of the region, will help us accomplish our objectives in all of the sectors of economy. And we can learn by the example of Estonia and Singapore, or reform of electronic government and services in Azerbaijan and Georgia, and successful experience of Pakistan in deploying the broadband communication services in remote areas with the support of the facility that was established several years back, as well as the successful experience of the PRC, which is moving towards becoming the world's first cashless economy. And the experience of European countries is also very exciting, especially in the area of e-government, protection of data, development of data technologies, and ensuring community engagement and involvement of the civil society into the various processes, as well as the positive practices in the reform of telecommunication sectors and application of artificial intelligence technology, big data handling, development of the enormous market of financial technology, and application of various technology in various sectors, such as the agricultural sector. Also, there are very good examples and good practices of development of the ICT sector in such African countries as Nigeria and Kenya, as you mentioned before. And the example of India in terms of outsourcing is also very interesting. And I would like to say that in Tajikistan, we have approved the digital economy concept a year back, which was developed with the involvement of the World Bank experts. And I would like to express deepest gratitude to the World Bank for the ongoing support in developing our digitalization. Thank you. Over to you.
Great, thank you very much. Lots of examples from all around the world there. But coming back to the CAREC region, I'm very glad that we have someone from Kazakhstan we can ask about e-government in particular, because Kazakhstan is recognized as a leader in the region. So I'd be interested to hear about that, but also about which other countries around the world can offer advice and best practices to the CAREC member countries. So I would like to call upon, please, Mr. Alibek Kurantryov, the Vice Minister for the National Economy of Kazakhstan.
Yeah, thank you, Tom. Let me greet, first of all, Mr. Jabarov, Dr. Bandar Hajar, Mr. Evgeny Zhukov, all ministers and participants, governors and elder governors. Special thanks to the ADB for organizing this session. Well, it is true that the experience of all CAREC member countries and other countries in applying the effective approaches to digital transformation in the field of PPP is interesting and important for all of us. Undoubtedly, each of the CAREC member countries has achieved certain results in digital transformation. In the first place, of course, it's China, and also Uzbekistan is taking place. As Mr. Standish noted, Kazakhstan achieved substantial results in digitalization of the public sector, but now we're also aiming at doing the same in the private sector and in industries. I would like to note that several high-tech projects have been successfully introduced and implemented in our country through the PPP mechanism, which has significantly influenced the digital transformation. In particular, the PPP project on the creation of the system for photo, video recording and video analytics, CAREC, proved its effectiveness. The main goal of this project is to improve traffic discipline, as well as the level of traffic and public safety. Another project is the development of an information system for paperless workflow in the field of air cargo, which is called e-freight. This is the first PPP project of the Republican significance on digitalization in the field of transport. Thanks to this project, our country significantly increased its capability as a transit hub connecting Europe and Asia. And as of today, the entire cycle of air cargo transportation based on international standards is digitally represented only in Kazakhstan. Another large-scale project is provision of broadband internet access to rural settlements in the country using the fiber optic communication light technology. The successful implementation of this project will ensure favorable conditions for the introduction of the most modern digital services, such as digital government services, digital medicine, and educational initiatives. International experience shows that digitalization of government services is a useful way to increase the effectiveness of interaction between government agencies and the private sector, as well as to reduce costs. This can be seen from the successful examples of digital services for the private sector implemented in such countries as Estonia, Denmark, Finland, Sweden, Singapore, and South Korea. The experience of these countries is of great interest, not only to our country, but to the whole CAREC region. I believe that it is necessary to accumulate the existing achievements, scientific potential, and ensure the transition to a new digital reality. And cooperation within the CAREC framework and outside of it will help to attract investments for the implementation of important social and infrastructure projects. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. I would like to now ask Mr. Chang Wu-zhou, the representative from the People's Republic of China, for his perspective here. Clearly, China has gone through an extraordinary digital transformation in the last 20 years. So I wondered if there were any lessons that that China could offer, in particular on the role that government can play in helping this digital transformation come about, in promoting things like e-commerce and so on. What's your perspective on that?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the given floor again. I'll have some quick points on how China do here, to take the digital economy as the top priority. Well, the very first point is speed up infrastructure construction. We vigorously developed the new forms of infrastructure characterized by 5G, data center, industry networks, and the smart cities to promote our comprehensive digital capacity. My second point is how we optimize development environment of digital transformation. The central government and also the local governments have intensively rolled out policies to support the digital transformation and to provide comprehensive solutions for all business, both small or giant. We have also formulated several national standards, such as evaluation models of the maturity degree of data management capacity, and to strengthen standard guidance. The third is to grow our digital industry to be bigger and stronger. We focus on supporting the development of strategic emerging industries, such as big data, AI, and blockchain, and to cultivate world-class digital industrial clusters through setting up data centers and industrial zones and pilot zones. And my fourth quick point is how we improve the digital ecosystem over time, as pointed out by many speakers. We really work hard to strengthen data management and foster data factor markets to facilitate data collection, management, and usage, and finally unleash the value of data factor. And for your information, China has established big data management administrations at all local levels to supervise, to manage, to foster the data transaction market while maintaining the data security. The very last point is how we improve the digital governance. We explore ways to employ the digital technology to build a digital society and a digital government, to make public service and social governance more digitally oriented. And I want to give a very short example. Last week, I visited Shanghai, where we see Shanghai's integrated online platform program, which has been included into United Nations e-government survey 2020. Just to do all things on one platform. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, I think for years now, people have talked about how easy it is to pay parking tickets and things like that through your phone in Shanghai. Thank you very much. Just staying on the subject of data, we are going to now take a question from the audience about the challenge when you improve connectivity across borders. What do you do about data standards? And in particular, what do you do when different countries have different positions on things like privacy regulation or data retention? So I would like to address that question to Susanna Hargitay, please.
Tom, you probably know I like very challenging questions. There is no magic wand here, because there is different perception of risk with respect to data management, access to data, use of data, both by authorities and also the users, including the public and commercial users. So again, you will tell me I'm a kind of obsessed with workshops, but I think it's worth having the workshop so that CAREC members a bit better understand each other's concerns the risk perception level of how they see it. It might be country specific and it might well be the case, but also to invite those who have established other kind of standards, be it, you will not be surprised if I suggest European Union countries, but also again from outside, whether it's China, whether it's Japan, but have a discussion, less statements, more kind of exchanges. Hopefully an in-person meeting would facilitate such a discussion to understand which way CAREC as such would go. Of course, I hope that colleagues would agree with me when I say that we at EBRD would not be advocates of lowering the standards, that is super maximum restrictions and kind of breach of privacy so that we get there just because of national security concerns. But I repeat, I think that there should be a better understanding because it might very well be national security concerns. Commercial, there I see ampler kind of room for understanding how, again, and who can access what kind of data for which purpose. But this understanding would need to be developed in the CAREC community. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you. Well, that is the perfect setup for, I would like to invite the representative from Tajikistan to address this because just to summarize the discussions today, there is a very clear consensus that the most immediate opportunity is to improve trade in goods and services across borders within the region by harmonizing technology, harmonizing standards and so on. So how will CAREC countries do that and ensure that worries about data regulation and different approaches to data don't get in the way of that happening? I would be very interested to hear your take on that. Over to the representative for Tajikistan.
Thank you very much indeed. I would like to answer your question in the context of opportunities and capabilities of the CAREC program. What can we do? So in the light of these new challenges and the growing needs for investments, I believe that within the framework of the CAREC program, we need to increase the assistance and exchange of experience and knowledge and best practices on the harmonization and modernization of the legislative and regulatory framework in the area of ICT to develop open and competitive markets of telecommunications and improve the conditions for attraction of private investments. Attention should also be given to the study of new business models and best practices in the area of PPP, including the government support programs for the expansion of digital infrastructure of especially remote and hard accessible rural areas. In this regard, I would like to note the special role and significance of the CAREC Institute in this area. As far as the confidentiality is concerned, taking into account future development of digitalization and the colossal speed of the growth of the data massive, we need to pay special attention to the consolidation of efforts to improve the trust from the citizens and their protection from data abuse and negative consequences of data use. We need efforts to strengthen the national systems for the collection, processing, and storage of data for full-fledged implementation of the huge capacity in the area of data for the common good. At the same time, it is necessary to develop the legal norms aimed at improving the information security and the protection of personal data. I would also like to note in the context of that in this context, cooperation of the government and the private sector is very important. We need to strengthen this cooperation within the framework of large-scale programs aimed at improving the digital literacy of the population, and we need to expand in-depth programs in the area of new technologies such as artificial intelligence, big data, Internet of Things, and robotization for their effective application in all sectors of the economy. And we also need to optimize the use and reduce the losses of energy. A very important role in this area belongs to the development partners that are members of our program, including the Asian Development Bank, the World Bank, Islamic Development Bank, the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, and all other partners. Thank you for your attention.
And thank you very much, Mr. Hikmatullah. That was a perfect note on which to end our discussions. Thank you to all of our panelists for taking part today. Thank you for your questions. I thought that was an extremely constructive discussion, and there's a very clear direction of travel that comes from that. So at this point, I'm now going to call on James Lynch, the Director General of the East Asia Regional Department, to make his concluding remarks. Mr. Lynch, over to you.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Tom. And in my opinion, today's session was fantastic. And I think we all learned a lot from one another. As we bring this session to a close, let me begin by thanking Mr. Tom Standage for being an excellent moderator for the panel discussions. And I think the discussions today really highlighted the many roles that digital technologies can play in responding to the pandemic, but also in supporting longer-term recovery. We also learned that by working together under the CAREC program, we can harness digitalization to strengthen regional cooperation, to stimulate economic growth, and to support more sustainable, inclusive, and resilient development across Asia, across Central Asia and beyond. So let me try to share with you three takeaways from today's session. First, the CAREC programs provides all of us with an ideal platform to promote digital cooperation. CAREC countries have already adopted their individual digital strategies, which is really a commendable starting point. And as we heard today, the CAREC program provides a unique opportunity for members to share their technical know-how and lessons learned, and also to tackle many of the common challenges through digital solutions. Our cooperation on the Information Custom Exchange Initiative, for example, has yielded significant improvements in customs information exchange and in simplifying and harmonizing systems and procedures. Looking beyond IT applications that facilitate cross-border trade, digital tools such as surveillance and early warning systems can help CAREC members control and prevent transnational threats to public health, agriculture, and the environment. The second key takeaway is that there is a need to mobilize both private and public finance to support digital transformation in the region. We've seen how quickly the private sector has applied and reshaped digital technology in response to the pandemic. E-commerce, telemedicine, online education are just a few examples. As many participants mentioned today, partnerships between the public and private sectors play an increasingly essential role in developing, financing, and applying new digital technologies. For the CAREC region, there is tremendous potential to promote PPPs and catalyze private investments in the digital space. ADB can serve as a facilitator, enabler, and financier in this process, and in responding to the digital needs and constraints of SMEs in the region is really a top priority. Number three, regional cooperation and digitalization can help CAREC build back better. Building back better will require continued investment in quality infrastructure or the hardware across all sectors. But I think as we've come to learn, the software is more important than ever. Not only digital software, but software in terms of new reforms and policies to create the enabling environment for innovation, application, and investment. So in this context, regional dialogue is so important for harmonizing standards, responding to the challenges of privacy and cybersecurity, as well as addressing the digital divide, both in country, but also region-wide. So distinguished guests, today's session on reimagining regional cooperation to digital transformation represents a significant step forward as we begin to shape the CAREC digital strategy. On behalf of ADB, I'd like to thank everyone for their participation in today's session. A sincere expression of appreciation goes to Minister Mikhail Jabarov of Azerbaijan and ADB's Vice President Shijin Chen for their roles as co-chairs, and of course to our CAREC country representatives and our development partners. Thank you for your valuable insights and contributions this afternoon. Finally, we are very grateful for those who worked hard behind the scenes to make this virtual session possible, including this CAREC Secretariat, ADB's Office of the Secretary, and our IT department, just to name a few. So everyone, thank you very much. Stay safe and enjoy the rest of the day. This meeting is now adjourned.